Yes, certainly. Because the restored correction that is built with the stones of the old castle, and there are our cells, they are not bigger as this. Here he sleeps, and there was his toilet, but it was very, very empty, very, very cold here.
Centuries later, and debates continue about Tyndale's life and death. The European Institute of Protestant Studies even believes that Tyndale was not fully killed by strangulation and continued to suffer while being burned alive. There is even contention about exactly why he was put to death.
The only mistake he did, that he didn't recognize the Pope as chief of the church, of the Catholic Church.
Why was William Tyndale put to death? What's the real history?
I suppose essentially because he translated the Bible into English, and there was a strong feeling that the Bible shouldn't be translated into the vernacular, shouldn't be translated into English. He also fell foul of Henry VIII. From a point where he supported Henry's move towards becoming supreme head of the church, Tyndale moved into opposition to Henry's divorce. He was put to death ostensibly because he was a heretic, because there was great unease about making the Bible available in English where everybody could read it and have their own personal relationship with God, rather than paying attention to the hierarchy of the church, being under the authority of their betters, as it were.
There is no question but that the politics of England at this time were complicated. King Henry VIII went to great lengths to achieve an annulment of his marriage to Catherine of Aragon. The term red tape is said to have originated from all the red seals Henry had obtained in his petition to the Pope. While Henry would eventually cast off the papacy and make himself the temporal head of the Church of England, at heart his loyalties were much toward Rome. So much so that he was once cautioned about giving too much honor to the Pope, to which he replied, "There is no such thing as giving too much honor to the Pope." Henry's Lord Chancellor of England at this time was Sir Thomas More, who would become the chief opponent of William Tyndale and his Bible. Sainted by Rome for his undying loyalty to the papacy, More called Tyndale a beast and a hellhound in the kennel of the devil. All in all, More wrote 9 books against Tyndale, filling more than 1,000 pages with arguments and invective against the Reformer, and always defending the ultimate authority of the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church. When King Henry made his break with Rome, Thomas More was condemned as a traitor and put to death because of his continued allegiance to the Pope. This may be why Pope John Paul II, in the year 2000, named Saint Thomas More the heavenly patron of statesmen and politicians. This declaration was made on October 31st, which is known as Reformation Day in parts of Europe, the anniversary of the day when Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the church door at Wittenberg. Could this have been intended as a modern-day insult to the Reformation? Some Protestants in Europe found More's patron sainthood disturbing, because Sir Thomas More not only hated Tyndale and spent years trying to hunt him down, but also had a number of his followers tortured and burned to death for heresy. More even had his Chelsea home equipped with stocks and a whipping tree, so he could interrogate heretics himself. More had written, "And for heretics as they be, the clergy doth denounce them, and as they be well worthy, the temporality doth burn them, and after the fire of Smithfield, hell doth receive them, where the wretches burn forever." Protestant historians, to this day, believe it was More who orchestrated Tyndale's betrayal and execution. But in the end, Tyndale's final prayer would overcome his opponents. Before he died, he famously cried out,
"Lord, open the King of England's eyes."
The sadness of all this story is that 6 months after the death of William Tyndale, the king ordered Miles Coverdale to translate the Bible in English. And therefore he used the Bible, the translation that William Tyndale had made.
To this day, men believe that God answered the prayer of Tyndale. Not only would King Henry authorize the translation of an English Bible for the first time in history, but Tyndale's work as a translator would go on to influence nearly every English Bible that would follow.
Tyndale has a very large impact that's still with us today. I think the most obvious quotation is "Let there be light," which is often used. The one that I like best is "the powers that be," which of course occurred in a quite different context. Tyndale's is the first widely disseminated translation of the Bible into English.
William Tyndale, in his 1526 New Testament, was the one who laid the foundation for the English language as we know it today.
Tyndale's giving English to the English, if you like, and because his Bible is printed and is being widely disseminated, it's helping the language to develop.
And the Bible became the most read book because previously it was anathema. You couldn't read it. The common man couldn't read it. So it helped people to learn to read.
While previous Bibles were very large and kept in churches, the idea of Tyndale's Bible was to make it smaller in size so that a person could carry it with them wherever they went. Because most of Tyndale's Bibles were destroyed by the Inquisition, only a few copies remain. One of them is at the British Library in London.
Our copy is a very pretty book. It's also a very important book in terms of its language, because although it was printed in 1526, it's so familiar to us still today because it survives in the language of later copies of the Bible, notably the King James Bible of 1611, with which it's usually exhibited in our treasures gallery here, so that people can draw a comparison between the language of the two versions that are nearly 100 years apart in printing.
Before his death, Tyndale would also be the first to translate much of the Old Testament from Hebrew into English, including the first 5 books of Moses, then from Joshua to 2 Chronicles and the book of Jonah. While he was not able to finish his Old Testament translation, all his material became the basis of what was called the Great Bible, commissioned by Henry VIII, and the basis for the Geneva Bible that would be known as the Bible of the Reformation. Modern scholars, using computer technology, even believe that some 83% of the King James Bible was based on the work of William Tyndale. What follows are just a few of the well-known biblical phrases that come directly from his translation. Let there be light. Am I my brother's keeper? The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face to shine upon thee. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. The signs of the times. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. He went out and wept bitterly. Though I speak with the tongues of men and angels, in him we live, move, and have our being. Fight the good fight. Be not weary in well-doing, and looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith.